Thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, I will break the bow of Elam, the chief of their might. For I will cause Elam to be dismayed before their enemies, and before them that seek their life. And I will bring evil upon them, even my fierce anger, saith the Lord, and I will send the sword after them, till I have consumed them.
Well, this is really the meaty part of the prophecy right here. You find out that the Lord is fiercely angry. And of course, that's why the judgment is coming forward, and that's why the bow is going to be broken. God's angry because there's some bad leadership.
Right.
You don't destroy good leadership. They're going to be destroyed, their bad leadership. And the leadership in Iran right now is very repressive. It's really the most repressive Islamic regime on the planet right now, and they're trying to put their hand on a nuclear weapon.
Most importantly, the United States and Israel can declare with one voice that Iran must never be allowed to possess a nuclear weapon. Never, ever. And must cease its deadly funding, training, and equipping of terrorists and militias. And it must cease immediately.
And first of all, let's identify Elam, but also I want to mention the fact that when you see a prophecy in the Bible that is this overt, discreet, then you want to look for it either having been fulfilled at some time in the past or thinking that it might be fulfilled at some time in the future.
I've drawn the conclusion that we are looking at a prophecy for our time that is imminent, and as we explore the details of the prophecy, we're going to see that the conditions are ripe right now for this prophecy.
Iran has launched a direct attack from Iranian soil towards the state of Israel.
U.S. officials confirming that Iran has launched drones and missiles toward Israel, following through on its vow to retaliate for the deadly bombing of its consulate in Syria 12 days ago.
Have you ever wondered who Elam is, or Elam? And by the way, who are they? They're sort of mysterious.
Right. Elam was the grandson of Noah. He was the son of Shem. And his descendants made their way down and sort of settled in the area of modern-day Iran that hugs the Persian Gulf. Mm-hmm. So it would be on the western side of Iran. Now, when we look at a map of modern-day Iran, you'll see Elam comprises about 1/5 of modern-day Iran, and ancient Persia makes up the rest. So the other 4/5. Now, Jeremiah writes a prophecy of the latter days about Elam. Well, if it is a prophecy for our time, again, I do sincerely believe that it is a prophecy for our time. We're probably talking about the concerns of missile launching.
Even as the drones rained down on Israel, Iran's mission to the United Nations said the matter can be deemed concluded, but warned more violence would come if Israel or the U.S. retaliated.
There have been reportedly explosions in the western city of Isfahan. Now, some air carriers have since diverted their flights around that area, and it is worth noting Isfahan is a home to a major airbase for the Iranian military. It is also home to sites associated with Iran's nuclear program.
And there are reports of possibility of strikes in southern Iran near the Natanz and the Fordow nuclear facilities. Remember, these are the facilities that are said to be places that you can produce nuclear weapons. They also have a uranium conversion facility in Isfahan. And this is also in southern Iran, and there are reports that there have been airstrikes in that area as well.
Local media is reporting explosions in the Iranian city of Isfahan. Isfahan sits about 200 miles to the south of the Iranian capital of Tehran. At this location, there is an Iranian nuclear facility. There are also reports of activity at other locations across Iran. So in terms of the targets that were likely hit in any sort of strike and retaliation from the Israelis, you are looking at nuclear research facilities, additionally any sort of IRGC locations across the Middle East in places like Syria and Iraq, and then Iranian backed proxies across the region, and so Iran-backed Iraqi and Syrian Shia militias certainly would be on that target list for the Israelis.
The apparent retaliation to an Iranian attack against Israel over the weekend was meant to send a message to Iran that Israel can reach out and touch close to nuclear facilities.
Who's the fool in this posture right now? Who looks weak? The regime in Iran looks weak. And a way to pin that down is for Israel to go after Iran's nuclear weapons program, which I think it can destroy or disable in very substantial part, if not totally.
Is he's going to draw the four winds from the four quarters of heaven against Elam and scatter them toward all those winds. There shall be no nation where the outcasts of Elam don't go. Gary, that's a worldwide dispersion.
It is.
So it's going to be, it sounds like a humanitarian crisis when the bow of Elam is broken at the foremost of its might.
Let's stop right there. Do you get what Bill is saying? Breaking the bow. Now, this is an ancient idea brought into modern terms. An ancient bow and arrow is a modern ICBM. And to break the bow means to reduce or destroy the enemy's capability to launch those missiles, which, by the way, are zeroed in on Israel.
There are those that say that, Jeremiah 49 has been fulfilled in the past. Nothing to see here. It was either fulfilled by Nebuchadnezzar or Alexander the Great. Right there, kind of give us an answer to why you see that as not being accurate.
But there's no historical sources that show Nebuchadnezzar II it would be at that time. In the 6th century, or Alexander the Great and the Greek armies in the 3rd century, it caused a disaster that resulted in the Elamites, the indigenous population, being scattered to the countries around the world at that time. And that's what's called for in the prophecy, a worldwide dispersion. There's no historical evidence of that with Nebuchadnezzar II or Alexander. In addition, there's no historical evidence that Nebuchadnezzar's armies are Alexander the Great's armies, and government officials in Jeremiah 49 verses 38, that they were killing the kings and the princes, which is what is called for there, the leaders. If the complete destruction of Elam does not have to seem been fulfilled in the history, then why can't it be fulfilled in the future? And it says in Jeremiah 49 verses 39, that this will happen in the latter days. It's the same Hebrew words as in Ezekiel 38 that talks about the last days. Now, it's interesting because I cover this in my Future War Prophecies book about this historical research and why there's no evidence of these things. A colleague of ours, Dr. Mark Hitchcock, had advocated that it happened during the time of Nebuchadnezzar, but after a volley of emails back and forth, even Mark Hitchcock even recognizes now that it could not have happened historically. So I do think it's important to get the details out in front of your viewers of what I believe is about to happen because of what Iran's doing right now. They're fiercely angering the Lord. That's what's called for in the prophecy. It says, I will be fiercely angry and I will bring about a disaster in Iran because of my fierce anger. I will break the bow of Elam, that's their missile launching capabilities, at the foremost of their might. It says, among the disaster, there will be a worldwide scattering. The disaster will probably lead to a humanitarian crisis. Then it says, I will consume Iran with the sword, and they will be dismayed before their enemies, meaning Iran will have to have a menu of enemies at the time. And look what they've got now. A coalition came together against Iran at this point during their missile interceptions, that invasion recently. So they'll consume them with the sword. It sounds like there might be a ground invasion after the missile launching capabilities were taken out. And then ultimately that leads to a disaster which causes a worldwide dispersion, a humanitarian crisis. But clearly there's a dispersion we're told about, a worldwide dispersion. It says there'll be no nations, plural. If the Elamites do not go, the Iranians of that area will be affected. They will disperse. I do believe this is a prophecy that could happen very soon, maybe even next on the calendar.